of the United States
of America,
and
to
to
the
the
republic
Republic
for which it stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
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 indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice.
liberty and justice for all.
All right. Perfect. All right, everybody's back on. So our first order of business on the agenda is the election of officers. The first election is that of the president of the school board. And the way this will work is we will do verbal nominations first, like we always do. If there is more than one verbal nomination or more than one candidate nominated for president, then Tim will email you out a Google form for the secret ballot, and then you'll fill those out to be able to write in who you would vote for. If there is only one person nominated for president, then what can happen is there can be a motion that can be made to go ahead and nominate that person as president. We get a second, we'll do a vote, and then we won't go into secret ballot for that. So at this time, this is the first call. Any nominations for president of the Board of Education?
And nominate Jamie Johnson.
I
Second
accept the
call.
nomination.
Jamie, you accept nomination, okay. Second call. Are there any other nominations? Are there any nominations? Third and final call. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the nomination process. I would entertain a motion to nominate Jamie Johnson, or to vote Jamie Johnson as the president of the Hudson School Board.
So moved.
Can I get a
Second.
second? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Same sign. All those opposed? All right, Mr. President, I will hand it over to you. I'm not quite as efficient at running those. I probably should have done a roll call, but we didn't have any dissenters, so I think it'll work. Tim can still list it as a roll call, I guess. So I'll turn it over to you for the nominations and the election process for vice president.
All right. All right. Again, thank you everyone for your confidence in me. And now we will open up the nominations for vice president. Is there any nominations?
I would like to nominate Bruce Hanson.
And Bruce, do you
I
accept the
accept.
nomination? Okay. So we have one accepted nomination. Is there any other nominations? Second call for any other nominations for vice president? And third call, any nominations for vice president? Hearing none, I would hereby declare the nominations closed and entertain a motion for election of Bruce Hanson as vice president for the 2020-2021 board calendar year.
I'm sorry, do we have to make a motion?
Yes. Is there a
So
motion?
moved.
All
So
right.
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. There's been a motion, a second. All those in favor of electing Bruce Hanson to the position of vice president of the board signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, Bruce is reelected to vice president position. Next up is treasurer. Is that right? Treasurer, or is it clerk next?
Treasurer is just fine.
That's okay. I was going from memory, so treasurer, I was right. Treasurer, is there any nominations for treasurer?
I nominate Heather Logan, treasurer.
Okay. And Heather, you accept the nomination?
Accept, yep.
Okay. Any other nominations for treasurer then? That's first call. As now second call, any further nominations for position of treasurer for the 2021 school calendar or board year? I haven't heard any yet, so this is the third call for nominations for position of treasurer of the school board. I'm not hearing any. I'm going to declare nominations closed and would accept a motion to elect Heather Loughlin as treasurer for this coming year.
I moved it.
All right, Sue moved, and Bruce, was that you or Bob?
Second.
All right. I heard a second.
We raised our hand,
Okay, yeah, that helps. Thank you, Sue.
this process.
You raised your hand, and Bob did too, so there we go. All those in favor of electing Heather as treasurer for this next school board year, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. All right, and now we're to the position of clerk. And is there any nominations for clerk?
I'd like to ask, Bob, would you be interested in that?
You do such a fine job, Carrie. I would not be interested in that.
I'll nominate Carrie Whitaker, clerk.
Okay, we have a nomination of Carrie for clerk. Is there any other nominations? That's first call. Now, second call, any other nominations for clerk? And third call for nominations for clerk for the 2020-21 school board calendar year. I'm pausing because there was a nomination once on the third call. So, all right, I didn't hear any. Will anyone please make a motion then to entertain unanimous selection of Carrie as,
So moved.
all right.
Second.
Robin. And Heather had her hand up before you said the second, Bruce. So Heather gets the second to Rob's motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, that motion passes. Congratulations, Carrie, Heather, and Bruce. All right. Then next up on our agenda is citizens' request to speak. Did anyone get anything submitted in that regard? I'm seeing Nick shake his head. All right. So hearing none, I'm going to turn it over to Nick for the COVID-19 semi-monthly update.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, perfect. So a couple of things just want to touch on. First of all, we are continuing our virtual or distance learning that's been going on now for, I think we've hit the 6-week mark that we've been doing this. Staff have done an outstanding job. Parents have done a great job. Our kids are hanging in there. But I think as the weather gets nicer, obviously it's going to continue to be more and more of a challenge to try to keep everybody engaged. But I think it's something that we're all kind of rising to that challenge and want to see things come to completion here. As we look at this, we are doing different planning as it relates to summer school and what are the different potential timelines we're going to have. I would anticipate that at the next board meeting, Dave and Sandy will be able to give you a presentation on summer school and kind of some finalized timelines and what we're thinking along those lines, kind of what is plan A, plan B, as we work through some of those pieces. But I would be remiss, like I said earlier at the last call when we talked about Jen doing such an outstanding job with our delivery of technology, that really Dave and Sandy have really hit this thing out of the park, with our virtual learning, and their team has really done a nice job with this thing. And also, I think sometimes it gets overlooked, but Aaron's role as we talk about delivering instruction to some of our kids that have some of our biggest challenges in student services, kids with special needs and things along those lines. And so a big thank you to those three have really gone above and beyond what we could expect. As I talk to different school districts and what they're doing, and even talking to family members who are in different school districts, we are very fortunate in what we have going on. So very thankful with that. Graduation update as it relates to COVID-19. So we will have a letter going out here in the next day or so, kind of outlining a couple our contingencies. And right now, we're essentially looking at having some type of virtual graduation accompanied with an in-person graduation if we're allowed to. We have 2 different dates that are kind of set aside, and it's kind of plan A is the first date and plan B is the second date, and that letter will be going out. I think, like I said, I think tomorrow, as we finalize some of those things. And really, we got our guidance back from Department of Public Health and DPI, basically saying that we need to cancel or postpone any graduations for the foreseeable future. And so that's why we've pushed everything back and trying to get that taken care of. Now, graduation ceremony or commencement ceremony is just that. It's a ceremony. Because we push back the ceremony doesn't change the date in which kids graduate. I mean, kids still graduate on June 6th. I believe their diplomas will still be marked as June 6th. And so none of that will change. So just kind of something to keep in mind. The high school team has really been doing a great job putting together a lot of different events. This Thursday, we have the senior, they're picking up kind of their senior box event. And what's in there is they have the yearbook, they have the yard sign, they have T-shirt. I think they have a gift card from the all-night party. I think they have their cap and gown. All of these different things will be picked up. Their advisors will be there, spaced appropriately, socially distanced, on the sidewalk. And there's been a tremendous amount of effort and coordination for the high school to put this in. I mean, a lot of times you'll hear, well, this school is doing this or that school is doing that. And immediately you start to assume that everybody's doing all of these things all the time. And a lot of times that's not the case. It's almost like, going to your Facebook page and seeing all the wonderful things going on in everybody's life. You just assume that that's happening to everybody all the time. And really, it's not. But one of the other challenges is because we are a large high school, there are certain things that other districts can do that logistically don't work well for us. Somebody had asked about, putting senior banners up on the light post downtown. They heard a district that was doing that. And I said, I think that's a great idea. However, I'm not even sure if the city of Hudson has 465 light posts or 445 light posts. So we may run out of light posts to put banners on. And so, but for other districts, when you have a graduating class of 20 or 30, that works out really well. So they are working to really try to make it as special as they can, knowing that, obviously it's a little bit of a letdown to go through your 13 years of public education and then not to be able to have that level of commencement ceremony. Even if we are able to do a face-to-face graduation, we're under the assumption that even at those later dates, it's going to be probably scaled back from a standpoint of how many people we can have there. It may require us to have multiple graduations. Ceremonies, break the class into smaller groups so that we can get our numbers down, so we can maintain specific social distancing requirements and things along those lines. So those are some of the things related to graduation, and that letter will be going out, and we'll send a copy to the board. So you have a copy of that as well, so you can kind of see all the different activities and everything that we have going on. I had a public health call on Friday. This was with, one of the public health administrators for the state. So not necessarily Secretary Palm, but this would be one of the people that report directly to her. And really, there's starting to become a restlessness amongst the superintendents around the state. I think there were over 500 of us on the call between superintendents and some other additional people. And this idea that we can stay kind of closed indefinitely. And, I think most superintendents are starting to have concerns, obviously, that, we're going to continue to kind of create a wider disparity between almost the kids that are getting the attention and the kids aren't getting the attention, not necessarily socioeconomic, but just really, the parents that are involved versus the parents that might be working multiple jobs and can't be involved. And so, as we work through some of those things. And so the other thing is that's getting to be a little bit of a pushback is, the different rules for childcare providers versus schools. And, there's been kind of this pushback that if you're going to start to open up these childcare centers and you're start to allow summer camps and things like that, we would like to see our summer schools being able to be face-to-face so that we can work with kids and do those types of things. obviously, we want to be careful, mindful, and as safe as we can. But I think the big concern is as of right now, if it's a vaccination we're waiting for, or some type of herd immunity, which I don't think that's what they're waiting for. I mean, that could be a long time off, if ever. And so then the question starts to change from, okay, we've kind of done this, close everything right now and give people time to breathe, to try to say, okay, how are we going to start to attack this in a more way? And she did talk about that. She said the safer at home order was really a blunt instrument used to, just basically stop things in its tracks. But now it's the shift at the public health level is really shifting to being more strategic and more, precise, almost like the difference between an axe and a scalpel, type of thing. And so I think, we're going to start to see some of those things lifted. I think the general census across the state with superintendents were, we'll plan for every scenario in the fall. However, trying to plan for 4 or 5 scenarios, it makes it very difficult to flush anything out really well. And so, that creates some real challenges for us. Additionally, on that call, after public health was off the call, and then we were talking from a statewide level about some of the budgetary considerations and things that we have going on. So just as kind of an update, we are, I think we're sitting in a fairly good position as we get ready to end this year. And we've talked about that already a couple of meetings ago. However, it's looking like state revenues are going to be down, and obviously in a significant way. The month of April was down about $830 million compared to the month of April the year before. Now, caveat to that, or the asterisk that people have to remember, is the month of April is a big month for state revenues because April 15th is income tax filing deadlines, and so that's been extended to July 15th. So you don't quite know, how much more revenue of April are you going to maybe get in May and June and part of July. So that might temper some of that. And so what we're hearing is the Legislative Fiscal Bureau will really have a clear picture after, obviously, the July 15th. The legislature will have an extremely clear picture of August. But then the concern, I think, that we're all wondering is, will they do a budget repair bill or not? There is an expectation, and I think it's in statute, that requires if revenues are falling under more than 5% of what is projected, then they're required to convene and do some type of budget repair bill. However, it is an election year, and the likelihood of them coming in and just making major cuts to state programs 2 months before an election is not overly popular, and I don't know if that'll happen. And so it could be that we're looking at a budget repair bill sometime in November, after the election, but 4 or 5 months into our fiscal year, which makes it a little challenging. Obviously, I think we are positioned well to handle just about anything they can throw at us for this next fiscal year, FY21. I think we're sitting in a fairly good spot. However, it's the FY22, FY23 biennium budget, which is the following 2 years, are the ones that we're most concerned about. And government, as in past downturns, government is usually a year, 2 years, 3 year lag behind the economy as far as the problems, just because of the way the revenues come in. And so we're going to have to probably do some different planning and some different looks at our budgets and things like that at a more in-depth level earlier than we typically have done in past years. And so those are the ones we're watching most closely. We will have a pretty good idea what that's starting to look like I said, in August. If things start to bounce back a little quicker, like today, for example, the governor opened up, small businesses can have up to 5 customers come to the retail location at any given time. They can have them inside, which is a huge jump. I was reading the article on it this afternoon. Basically, it opened up work for about 90,000 people. So there's about 90,000 people in the state of Wisconsin that are out of work as it relates to those businesses that now potentially could be back at work. Now, the thing is, as we all know, the governor can say it's open, or the business can say, hey, I'm open, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to go and patronize those businesses. And so, I think it's something that we're going to have to kind of watch and see, because it will be, our revenues are obviously tied to how the state opens and how it bounces back. With budgetary considerations and some of the things that we may have coming up, we are going to have to be looking at, what could potential layoffs look like or furloughs look like and things along those lines. And so we do not have language in our staff handbooks about furloughs. We have layoff language, but we don't have furlough language. And originally we were going to have that language on tonight's meeting and have you guys, look at it, vote on it before you voted the consent agenda, because we were going to have some potential summer employees that we were going to have to potentially look at either laying off or furloughing this summer. However, I think it's could have much bigger ramifications, this language and precedent setting, that I think it warrants a discussion by the board, a pretty thoughtful discussion by the board, because whatever it is that you decide to do potentially with some of these folks that may be laid off this summer, as it relates to our school age care program and things like that, if we're not able to offer a backpacker program, that would have precedent setting implications should we not be able to start the school year in a face-to-face mode. And so what I would like to do right now is ask you guys I'd like to do a special meeting between now and the May 26th work session, because one of the things that has to happen is we have to implement that language at the 26th meeting, because then we'd have to notify those individuals, because essentially that'll be about 14 days before the school year is over. And so, but I don't want to say, hey, let's just talk about it that night and then have you vote on it right away. I'd like you guys to be able to have some time talking about it, have some time away, opportunity to ask me questions, or Andrea or Tim or whomever, and then come back that night of the 26th, have some additional discussion, and then have you guys take a vote on the language, so that we can make sure that we're putting the language together in the direction that you guys want to go. So with that being said, when we look at this week, is there any night this week that works for people? And again, it couldn't be tomorrow night because we wouldn't be able to give our notice, but it could be as soon as Wednesday night, or it could be Thursday night. Otherwise, we could look at the next week as well. Thoughts?
I'm available. Either night. And do we have some models to look at? I mean, are there any school districts Andrea? Okay, good.
Yes, I do have sample language that I've worked up using our existing handbook language. Really, we have layoff language already in our support staff. We're focusing on support staff handbook. The language is already in there. We would want to tweak it to increase some flexibility. And then the furlough language would be new language.
Okay.
But yeah, we have drafts already ready to go.
I would say Thursday is preferred, but Wednesday works also.
Can I just say my son turns 11 on Thursday night, and we have an event. It would just be tough to hit Thursday.
Actually, Wednesday's actually better for me, Andrea. How's that?
Sorry, my face is red, but
Does
I mean, are we
Wednesday
talking-
work?
You shouldn't miss.
This is the agenda item. So I mean, we're talking about a meeting that's not going to be more than an hour.
We would hope it would not be more than an hour.
You want to
What would
start
be
it
the
at
start
6
time?
o'clock on Thursday?
What's that?
Wednesday, James.
Wednesday.
Wednesday,
What?
Jamie.
6 o'clock Wednesday?
Can we,
Yeah,
Can we
I
do
mean, if
5:30?
you guys can do it,
5:30?
5:30. I mean, we can do whatever time you guys want. Does Wednesday work for everybody, first of all? If no, put your hand up. Okay, everybody's got their hand up for yes. Okay, great. So now, do you prefer 5:30 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, whatever?
5:30 or anytime during the day.
oh yeah.
Yeah, you can do
5:30
during
would
the
be fine.
5:30 is fine.
5:30.
Okay.
5:30 Wednesday?
Okay, so Tim, in the minutes, just reflect that we'll do it at 5:30 Wednesday, and then I'll work with Tim to get it properly noticed so that we have the correct description on there.
So Andrea, are we going to be able to get whatever collateral you might be able to get us in advance?
Yeah, we'll
Yeah, I
send you
already-
samples of what we're thinking.
Yep, it's already, Tim Miner has it. He can forward it on to you guys right now. So you can see The proposed language, really, the goal is to have two vehicles to accomplish slightly different things, but hopefully maximizing flexibility in the future.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions of Nick then for either his COVID-19 report or the legislative update? Okay, well then we've got our agenda item for that Wednesday. And then when we go to reports here, it says secondary career tech ed report. And is that Sandy? She's got her hand up. Great. And since we're on the subject of technical stuff, can I ask the other two Zoom launch things that are still pending on my screen? Can I delete those now, or will that wreck anything? All right, I'll delete them. All right, good.
Oh,
Sue, do you have a question? Point of
Yes.
order?
I see deleted, oh no, that's coming later. I'm sorry. The report on the fire comes later, right? Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. The report on what comes
Wanted to
later?
Make sure we were gonna do the choir update, and I see.
Yeah, that's after the secondary career tech ed report. So Sandy, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much. While Leslie's pulling up the presentation, I'll get us started. Tonight's teaching and learning report is Career and Technical Education, or CTE. This area encompasses 4 departments: agricultural science, business and marketing, family and consumer science, and technical and engineering education. Our presentation tonight will include an update on the curriculum improvement process, our vision for CTE, dual enrollment, partnerships, grants, donations, and recognitions, and work-based learning. Presenting tonight is Leslie Biskacek, our school to career coordinator. Leslie, take it away.
Thanks, Sandy. I'd hoped to join you in the building today, but because my connection is not always good, so I'll pause after each slide just in case I break up and you need me to repeat anything. Hopefully you're seeing the slides now. So this is Career and Technical Education update. Quickly, as Sandy mentioned, we have a curriculum improvement process underway, and we're using Understanding by Design, a 4-phase process. And we've completed phase 1 and we're moving into phase 2. A reminder that our career and technical education instructors have a few more layers of standards than in some other disciplines. They have the WCCTS, or Wisconsin Core Career Technical Standards. Each program of study, and that would be agriculture, business, those types of programs of study, have their own state standards. There's also ELA standards and information and technology literacy standards. So each area and each instructor is looking at 4 different layers of assessment and student evaluation. Just a reminder of how things are structured. This is how the middle school course offerings are structured. So there's 6-week exploratories in 6th and 7th grade. You'll notice that business is highlighted. We've added some new options in business for the exploratories. And then in 8th grade, we moved to trimester electives within technical education, business, and family and consumer science. That's what FACS stands for. This is an artifact from phase 1 of curriculum improvement. We call this temperature chart. And this temperature chart shows what faculty have identified as prioritized standards. So for each program of study, they prioritize standards. They choose it as a priority standard if it's a standard that they are going to assess for mastery. They may well cover every single standard, but the ones that are identified as priority standards are ones that they're going to specifically assess. Then they deconstruct these standards to identify what kind of skills are associated with each learning target and what kind of skills needed to be built before the assessment takes place. So this, again, are artifacts of phase 1. As we move into phase 2, we're moving into assessment. Now, many of our CTE instructors are solo artists. So for example, we have in the high school, one individual that teaches in culinary and one individual that teaches in woods and one in welding and one in autos. So many times when we're talking about assessment in their programs, they can't compare from program to program because they have different state standards. They can compare longitudinally how their students are doing, but this is where the WCCTS or Wisconsin Core Career Technical Standards come in. These are more broad. They're about leadership, communication, character, those types of things. So this is where our programs of study are working together to determine where they can share activities and assessments so that they can compare from program to program. So this is an example of some assessments that we shared. The one on the left came from the middle school. Many of those programs are sharing their activities related to professionalism. And so they're comparing from program to program. The professionalism assessment on the right comes from the high school. So again, they're working together on this one layer of WCCTS standards to compare more broadly in each program. They'll continue to work with phase 2 in assessment over this next year. And to support our teachers, we make sure that they have time specifically set aside in their schedule to do this work. There are PLCs in the 6th through 8th grades, weekly meetings. For the 9 through 12 teachers, they meet on Thursday mornings during our late start. There's a 6 through 12 CTE curriculum vertical alignment to make sure that from 6th through 12th grade, it's a very smooth progression where they're building skills each year. So we make sure that there's non-duplication and there's no gaps in the skill building from 6 through 12. There's also 6 through 12 CTE committee meetings when instructors can gather together, compare notes, make sure everyone is aware of what's happening in each other's world. There's also time on professional development days for everyone to get together, compare notes, and talk about assessment. And there's also teaching and learning support. There's support with assessment throughout their career, but certainly they, at any time beyond specific professional development days, they could talk with an instructional coach or a peer in order to work on their assessment projects. So that's the update curriculum. Again, we're going to be continuing it's continuous improvement. So we're never really done. It's just an ongoing effort. One thing you may hear about that is separate is Perkins 5. Perkins, again, the Carl Perkins legislation is federal legislation. They contribute to some of the CTE instructional funding. This next year, we get about $23,000. So it's not a large amount, but it helps us do some activities. And now the state and the DPI is requiring a program of study to fulfill 3 of the 5 following criteria starting this next academic year. They have to have at least 2 high school courses in sequence, and they have to build on the skills. So that'd be, for example, Woods 1, Woods 2, Autos 1, Autos 2, Culinary 1, Culinary 2, you get the idea. They also have to have work-based learning options. That's either on-the-job training, cooperative education, or youth apprenticeship. These are recognized work-based learning in the state. They have to have an industry-recognized credential. That's a third-party type of credential. For example, a certified nursing assistant would be industry-recognized credential, an OSHA 10 certification for safety, or we do ASE, Automotive Service Excellence certification for our students. Fourth is they have to have dual credit opportunities or the opportunity to earn college credit while they're in high school. And I'm happy to report that in almost every area, we have ample dual credit opportunities. And last but not least, they need to have a CTSO or a career technical student organization. Some of the ones that we have are DECA, HOSA, FFA. These are examples of usually nationally affiliated CTSO organizations. This is a way for students to do their own professional development as they're moving throughout their high school career. Now, some of our programs of study that exist now don't fulfill this requirement of 3 of the 5 criteria. In the future, we've also heard that they're going to move to 4 of the 5 criteria. That doesn't mean we have to stop offering the coursework. It just means they aren't eligible for Perkins funding. So some of the things that we may offer, like intro to teacher education, our video production, those types of things won't be eligible for Perkins 5, but that doesn't mean, again, we wouldn't offer that as part of a broad package of career and technical education coursework. So you may hear about Perkins 5 a little bit. We're doing a broad look at everything that we're doing in order to make sure that we're aligned with the new criteria. There's also an increased focus on equity and access. So you're going to be hearing us also working in that area in the coming academic year. So moving forward, so our vision for CTE is so that each high school program of study has dual enrollment or an industry credential. Again, not just because that's required for Perkins 5, because that is, but because it's in the best interest of our students. We also want to make sure they have some kind of student enterprise experience. And we have a great deal of that at the high school now. FFA holds a plant sale. We have the Raider store that our business and marketing students are working in. We have Raider Works that a lot of our woods, metals, and engineering students are working in on outside projects. Common Grounds is our cafe, and I'm working with the Culinary 3 students so that they could potentially sell product within the cafe. And also for our auto students, they're doing small engine repair for people in the outside community. So again, these enterprise experiences are kind of a work-based learning experience, but within the high school where the students drive this, they have exposure to customer service and business plans and financials and those types of things. This is really particularly important for our students who may not have access to transportation to be able to work in work-based learning. It gives them a similar experience. Another thing we want to do is make sure that we are increasing our career exploration opportunities. We heard very strongly in the focus group data that came as Nick was looking at strategic planning that students and parents alike and employers obviously think it's very important that students make an informed decision about their career after they leave their high school experience. So we want to make sure that they have a broad exposure to each career and each program of study. This could be offsite tours, it could be speakers, it could be shadowing. Again, this interfaces with our Zello as well. So we want to make sure we broaden this and give all students that experience. And finally, we want to make sure that there's robust work-based learning, that students aren't similarly just signing up for work-based learning because they can get credit, but we really want to make sure it becomes strong career exploration, that Woods students have capstone experiences in Woods. Auto students are working within business and industry so that these are value added. So that's our vision for CTE moving forward. So this is a bit of dated information. This was in March. So for dual enrollment, as of right now, we have 512 students enrolled in dual enrollment coursework. And that represents almost $170,000 that they've saved potentially in tuition. So you'll see on the left is the course. Next column is the number of students enrolled, the amount of tuition saved, and the total savings. Now, as we move forward in our new normal, we're working very closely with Wisconsin Indian Head Technical College and Chippewa Valley Technical College to make sure that students are harmless. That is, for some reason, they aren't able to meet the outcomes, that they have the option now to back out of dual enrollment so that they don't generate a college transcript with a poor grade. And speaking with the instructors, they're pretty confident that many of their students will continue to pursue dual enrollment, and we are meeting the outcomes. So it remains to be seen if this savings holds. Again, we're in extenuating circumstances, but we've been working very closely with our post-secondaries to make sure that the maximum number of students that can complete do, and those who are challenged are not penalized with a poor transcript. The bottom line there, you'll see by comparison, this is increasing year over year. So in the 17-18 school year, we had $43,000 in cost savings, 18-19, $140,000. This year, we're on track for almost $170,000. We anticipate this is going to keep continuing as more students become aware of this option. One of the things that we're really working on this year and with a focus is working with business and industry to make sure that we have strong connections, because they can not only give us work-based learning opportunities, but they also want to reach in and help us, particularly in the high school right now, with materials and supplies. So with the health and human services area, Wisconsin Indian Head Technical College donated materials and supplies so that we can offer the nursing assistant curriculum and other health classes on site. So the next time that you're in the high school, it's right behind the LGI, the large group instruction, down the ramp, you'll see a health specific classroom. It's a classroom with 4 hospital beds and a hospital setup so that students can take those classes on site. So we're working with WITC in order to offer that. That's been something our students have been wanting. We're looking for additional dual credit opportunities with Chippewa Valley Technical College, and the Hudson Middle School Parent Group also helped us purchase a Red Cross training babies for first aid CPR so that students can get their babysitter certification. So from middle school all throughout high school, we're trying to work with business and industry to increase that opportunity for students to become aware of opportunities in this program of study. Same is true for manufacturing. Last year, we worked with a national movement to have more information about manufacturing in October, which is Manufacturing Month. So on October 4th, we had 150 students visit 3 companies and learn more about manufacturing, everything from the line worker to the CEO, to find out the broad range of experiences and opportunities there that are local opportunities for manufacturing. Our next manufacturing day is scheduled for October 1st. Hopefully, our fingers are crossed. We also received a grant from Donaldson's Corporation for $10,000 to improve and update our welding lab. They've asked us and encouraged us also to submit for a second round. So you see the big check there, Nick's smiling with the big check, and the students. So they're able to update and get some great equipment. So we hope to continue to upgrade and update our labs. With construction in Woods, we had an event scheduled called Build My Future, been rescheduled for April of 2021. We hope to bring 200 students to the UW River Falls campus, and there'll be dozens of industry participants. They'll have lots of hands-on activities, everything from big equipment and masonry and architecture, design, engineering, and so on. So we're looking forward to doing this next year. We also received a scholarship from the St. Croix Valley Home Builders Association and an Anne Marie grant as well. So we've been successful with some grants and some business and industry relationship building here. The Build My Future in Wisconsin, we are partnering with St. Croix Valley Home Builders again. So it's really great to have these strong business and industry ties. We also have been fostering a great relationship with Luther Auto Group. They had told us when they toured our facility recently that, a lot of students work on their own vehicles and a lot of those vehicles are older. They encourage us to work on vehicles that are post 2008 because a lot of the technology changed in that year. And they said for our students really to be ready for the workforce, they needed newer equipment. And so they put their money where their mouth was and they donated a 2015 Jeep for us, for our students to work on. They're going to continue to work with us to donate other equipment, such as diagnostic equipment, so that we can continue to upgrade and get more current with business and industry. Next spring, we also hope to have a Transportation Careers Day, similar to the other career exploration days, working with Valley Cartage, the Minnesota State Transportation Center of Excellence, and Luther Auto Group. We're also looking at including some avionics in that as well, because we had some students express interest in avionics. So that will be a new activity that will be coming in spring of 2021. Now that's going on in the high school, but let's not forget what's going on in our middle school. We have some award-winning folks and activities that are going on in our middle school. And I just want to draw your attention to some well-deserved recognition recently. So if you recall last year, 3 of our instructors, Jody Bray, Aaron Harker, and Christopher De Leon, were recognized by Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin, for their outstanding work. Well, these 3 individuals were just recognized by the International Technology and Engineering Educators Association, ITEEA. This is them being recognized in Baltimore, Maryland, earlier this year for the outstanding program that they offer. And the quote that's on the bottom, I couldn't agree more. Their technology and engineering education program is truly exemplary among other programs in our state and certainly in the nation. So they were recognized for their great work here. In addition, Hudson Middle School is being recognized as a distinguished school in 2020 for Project Lead the Way. So these faculty are doing great work. We also found out recently that there is a third award, and we'll just put a bookmark in that. Students recently received an award, and we hope that maybe we can bring them to you on a future date so you can hear about the wonderful project that is earning recognition. So finally, talking about work-based learning. Again, this is on-the-job training, cooperative education, and youth apprenticeship. These are recognized work-based learning where students work off campus and they work with their instructors to get acceptable scores in an employability skills checklist, things like show up, get along, act appropriately, recognize safety requirements, and so on, in addition to a program-specific checklist. So there'd be one for hospitality with food service. There'd be one for autos with maintenance, those types of things. This is just a sampling of the area employers that we work with and the types of career pathways that we currently have work-based learning in. So we have a broad representation, but we want to make sure that we continue to strengthen this as time goes on, strengthen those relationships with business and industry. One other thing is, as I mentioned before, we are trying to really focus on equity and access. So I've been working with Robin Rivard, our transition coordinator, Kathy Schmidbauer, our English language learner coordinator, and others to really help us make sure that all students have these kind of opportunities and this type of recognition. Many of the work-based learning, they can earn state certifications, which look good on resumes and build confidence for students. And this year we had our first transition student who participated in work-based learning successfully, and he's now working at a local construction company. And the first quote is from him. When we asked about having completed youth apprenticeship and having full-time employment, he said, "I feel like I'm living the next chapter of my life." And that really is what that program is designed to do. The parent is happy, the student's happy, the employer's happy, I'm happy. So that really was a success, and we hope to build on that success in the future as well and increase that access and exposure. And a health employer recently said to me too, when I was on an on-site visit, she said, "Your students are wonderful. They're prepared, they're polite, and they're ready to work." And that's a really great recognition for our students that when it comes to work, we don't hear stories about horseplay or disrespectful or inappropriate. Really, our students hit the ground ready to go, very professional. So I have every confidence that they're going to be doing great things after they leave us onto whatever their next step is. So hopefully we're getting ready with all the tools that they need to make really good decisions. So I talked really quickly. Hopefully I didn't break up too much. But if you have questions for me, this is my email address. I'm here on email, as everyone is. Feel free, please, to reach out if you have any more questions. If I don't know off the top of my head, I certainly have time to check it out. That phone number clearly is not going to work for this time being, but in the future, when we're back to our new normal, you can reach me at that phone number as well.
All right, Leslie, stay online just in case they have some questions here. So a huge thank you to Leslie and to all of our CTE teachers. You can just hear the passion and you can hear the hard work, see the hard work that they're doing day in and day out. So are there any questions or comments? Sue, it looks like maybe you do.
Say that I was really impressed with your discussion of the vision for the program, and just amazed at how many businesses and services in the community are willing to work with us and to provide an opportunity for real experiences for the students in this program. So I know it's a lot of work to make those connections and to get people interested in being helpful. So thank you for that. And maybe there's some overlap with the mental health.
Mr. President?
Yes, Rob.
Yeah, with regards, Leslie, to the, you mentioned the enterprise portion of their activities. Can you describe a little bit what's happening with the students? Is there a senior perhaps that becomes the manager or the project manager that actually leads that group, and then the younger students sort of develop those skills as a unit versus the teacher leading? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. And you're right on. That is what happens with an enterprise organization. I'll take RadarWorks as an example. We talked about that a little bit in my last presentation, but RadarWorks actually has job descriptions, and students apply for those jobs and are hired into those jobs. And so they have students that are in charge of marketing, are in charge of billing, are in charge of pricing items, are in charge of customer service, are in charge of completing the work. So they are hired almost as if this is an outside organization. We wanted to emulate the real world as much as we possibly can. And so again, these students are evaluated by their instructor, but the instructor is the supervisor, but is not the one doing the work. So for RadarWorks, if someone comes with a project, they would come approach students with the project who would then evaluate the projects. Students would do the billing, students would then complete the project and interface with the customer back and forth. So it's the student that is in front of the other outside entity, the person that is asking for the work to be done. We really want to make sure that this is the test drive, the dress rehearsal for work on the outside as best we can. So it is very much student-led, and students are making the decision, and students are held accountable. So some of these are credit bearing and some are not. RadarWorks, they do receive credit. It is a course. The Radar Store is a little different. They do help with the ordering and selecting of the merchandise and staffing the store. So again, it varies from enterprise to enterprise. The Common Grounds enterprise is an unknown. That's the food service one. But we really want to make sure that this is an opportunity for students to step up, to show their stuff, and to have a real world experience with serving customers, with finding solutions to problems that they didn't even know were problems. Things like that happen in business every day.
Right on.
And RadarWorks does have an open house, usually in spring. So we'll share that information with you so that students show their projects, and it's really an interesting time to see what's going on behind the scenes. And we always have the students do all of the presenting. It's not the instructors, it's a student-run enterprise.
Any other questions? Yes, Heather.
Leslie, thanks so much. I'm curious about students who had workplace learning experiences that were in process this spring, and I have to imagine many of them were disrupted. How have we been able to make that work without actually being at the workplace?
Yeah, many of them were disrupted. Many of them are in hospitality, and clearly that's been disrupted. A lot of our healthcare students are still working in their locations. So the state of Wisconsin has come back, and with youth apprenticeship specifically, they've stated that they understand about the disruptions. They're giving us until September 30th for students to earn the required number of hours to receive their certification. They're also ramping back the number of hours that are required. So generally for youth apprenticeship, they're required to work 450 hours during a fiscal year, July 1st to June 30th. Now they're ramping that back to 338. So we may have some students, particularly seniors, who are not going to go back to their place of work, but they should still be able to get their certification because they will have met that number of hours. So as discreetly as I can, I'm still working with their employers to just verify that they've completed the work. And I would say over 90% will certainly do that. Juniors, I'm not so concerned about because I'll see them again, but I really am focusing now on seniors to make sure at least they can get the certification.
Any other questions for Leslie? I had one, Leslie, on the slide that was after talking about the Perkins 5. You said something about, and this is when you were talking about the vision moving forward, that it interfaces well with our Zello. And I didn't know if that was, what is Zello?
Oh boy, well, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. If you remember, if you've ever heard of Career Cruising or Zello, that's the same piece of software. What Zello is a software that we use during advisory for academic and career planning, or ACP. It's a career exploration software where students can put in their interests and their preferences and so on, and it will show them what kind of careers are a good fit for them. And so through that, there's also a back part of that that will show students where Like, say, for example, let's say you have an interest in avionics, it would show you what colleges offer that opportunity, how much that college costs, what the next step is. There's also something with workforce and with economic development organizations that are filling a database as well, so that if a student wanted to shadow, they could do that. That database is called Inspire. And so students could sign up for that and have a job shadow experience or an interview with someone who's in the field that they expressed interest in. So what we're trying to do is make sure that when a student expresses interest in a certain career path in Zello, that we target that student then for a further career exploration opportunity, kind of a hands-on opportunity. Zello is spelled Xello. It's their new trademark name.
Okay. So not even close to like Zillow, where you go online and find the value of your home. All right. Got it.
Right.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, thank you for that comprehensive report. Very important subject on the career tech readiness and everything. Doing an awesome job. Really make that a part of our high school curriculum that we can be proud of. So final report then, as Sue alluded to earlier, was the choir trip and the refunds. And Dave, is that you or who is taking that one?
Tim will be taking
Tim?
that one.
Yeah, Tim, take that one. Yeah, I'll take that. So, yeah, we've been working with Accolades International for the past few weeks to recover $447,000. That was what was paid in total to Accolades for the Spain or the Austria, Italy, and Germany trip for choir. At this point, we just got a check in today for $131,000. So that means we've recovered a total of $288,000. So that represents about a little over 64% of the total. There may be some additional smaller refunds coming, but at this point, this is what we've got now. So we want to start to get refunds issued out to families, and there's a piece there of about $159,000 that is not at this point going to be recovered. And what that consists of is mainly ground arrangements through WENS Travel, and they're a travel company out of the Netherlands, and it consists of hotels, coach fees, museums, guides, and concert venues. So the majority of that is not going to be recovered, about $159,000. We've got most of the airline fee back. Accolades, in discussion with Accolades, they said they've seen refunds ranging from 50 to about 70% on these trips, depending on cancellation date, what are the type of the tour and the destination. We've had a lot of discussion with Accolades regarding recovering additional funds. Their response last week is they felt they've done everything they can to recover funds. They also stated they've given up roughly half of their profit on the trip. They've also incurred their costs to set the trip up. But our plan is to start to issue refunds this week so that we can get families and kids and parents paid out for the refunds that we've received at this point. So I'll take any questions you've got at this point.
Mr. President.
Yes, Rob.
Yeah, and not so much a question, just to reiterate what I had heard when Andy and Accolades presented. People at home and those that were not able to participate that evening when Accolades talked a little bit about what was going on and how the refunds may or may not occur, is that it's a little bit different than when you book a hotel room for yourself within the United States. When you start talking about large groups and especially going into Europe and leveraging multiple layers to organize trips, you don't get back 100%. And so I think we should feel fortunate that we got the value that we did back. And so kudos to Andy, our choir director, and Accolades, and Tim, of course, yourself, and Dave Grambo for all the work that went into this.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on that report?
Yes, just say again, Tim, what percentage, did you say 67% of the total is what we've gotten back so far?
So Yeah, the percentage received at this point is 64%, about 64.4 to be exact.
So roughly 2/3.
Right, yeah.
And then, and Tim, how does that work out then for those that, maybe paid full and those that maybe did fundraising activities? Does a dollar equal a dollar in each sense? Or how are you calculating that out for each of the families? I don't know if that's a fair question or not, just curious.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a good question. And so if, for example, if I was a student and let's say the total cost of the trip's $3,500 roughly. And if I raised $500 and then paid an additional $3,000 to cover the full cost, I'll get 64% of the $500 I fundraised and also 64% of the additional that I paid, additional $3,000 that I paid in.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Yeah,
Mr.
Carrie.
President?
Gary.
Tim, for
Yes.
the folks who had purchased insurance, how are they also part of that, or are they a separate entity?
Yeah, so the people who purchase travel insurance for this, they're getting their refund of their premium back. So they actually don't have coverage for this, but the insurance company refunded the premium back for those folks. So there'll be an additional tack on for those people who paid the insurance premium for the trip.
So a couple of things I think we're going to have to probably add to a future agenda item is, the rate in which we are doing these trips, the amount of time and effort that is being consumed by school district staff, not only in setting these trips up, but now in this situation, the hours of trying to get this money back, and then the fact that we will still have people that aren't happy with the 65% return rate. And so, I think we are going to have to start to have some discussions about this, because it seems like we do go on a lot of international trips that aren't necessarily tied to maybe world languages or certain things. And I think it's a discussion that's probably long overdue on some of these pieces. Not that we wouldn't continue to go on trips, but just the rate or how frequently we would offer these things. Because like I said, it is a tremendous amount of work for our teachers. It's a tremendous amount of work for office staff and things like that. And I think, there starts to become kind of an expectation that we're going to do these things every 2 years or things like that, and it starts to snowball. And the other piece is the fundraising thing is we've had several conversations about the fundraising piece. I mean, I don't know how we're going to get the point across that you cannot fundraise at an individual level. You have to fundraise to offset the entire cost of the trip. And so, we're going to have to do a better job of getting that information out, because what happens is if you fundraise in your name and we allocate, let's say $800 of this trip fundraising to offset your cost as an individual, you've now earned income, because it's being tied back to the work that you're actually doing, versus, okay, we're all in this together as a group, we're going to fundraise the best we can, and then we use that to offset the total cost of the trip and bring it down, which is what the IRS has said is the expectation. We don't want to get in the business of having to go through these, determining who fundraised more than $600 and then starting to issue 1099s and things along those lines. And so, there are some things that we'll continue to look at cleaning up with these things. And I think Tim has done a great job. He has really, gotten after the travel company. I think the other piece we're going to have to look at is some of these travel insurances, like Tim said, people bought the travel insurance and then it still didn't cover them for the trip. They're going to at least get their money back on the premium for the insurance. But, it may be that our expectation is we go to that level of travel insurance, which is canceled for any reason travel insurance, but it will raise the cost of these trips, I think, substantially if we move to that level. And so we're going to have a discussion, and then also just kind of logistically how we're going to handle these. Right now, parents have been paying the school district, and we're writing checks to Accolades and things like that. And then people are looking at us and saying, we need you to refund our money. Well, I mean, we can't underwrite losses, as a school district for this trip. And, and Andy's done an outstanding job trying to apply pressure on them. I know Tim has. Dave has tried to talk with them as well. And so this is a longer discussion we're going to have this summer, kind of moving in, because the trips are getting more and more expensive, and it is definitely creating a much higher stakes environment for folks. So just kind of a narrative.
Bruce, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a couple more, and maybe just for those that may be listening in regards to this. We have clients in our environment right now that are enacting the force majeure language in our contract clauses. We obviously had a contract here, but these are acts of God. Is that something that was contemplated or discussed? Was there any legal recourse here that could be taken, or is that again more cost to the equation that again we're not necessarily held accountable to, or does the organization that set this up use that as grounds for seeking the claims back from the payment?
Yeah, Bruce, that's another good question. One in the back of our mind. But right now, our focus was to try to get as much back as we can, and now get these refunds issued out. We're going to look at that. We can look at some of that contract language and see.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know off the top of my head until we do that to know if there's anything else we can do.
And part of our challenge is who would pick up the cost on the legal expense. I mean, would people want us to deduct that from the money we got back before we refunded, or would the district underwrite that expense? And I think that's you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it may get to a point where the district's going to kind of wash their hands and say, okay, family's going to pay these companies direct. I would say that it is disappointing. This is what we got back. I did tell Tim that I believe that we may be asking the board to seek a resolution that says we're not going to work with this travel company anymore. Just from a standpoint.
And the travel company is one thing, but maybe even just the company that held firm, over in Europe. I'm sure there's other companies over there that maybe were a little bit more forgiving. We see this just in other businesses today too, right? So most of the hotels gave 100% back. Airbnb, 100% back. VRBO, they chose not to give 100% back. They said, you have to negotiate with the homeowner. Well, I think in the future, people will look at those decisions that were made and probably make future business decisions based upon that, or who to use. I would guess the same probably applies here. I know this is incredibly stressful and difficult for not just those that set the trip up, including Andy and others, but the families. So, it's just a stressful time, I think, for everyone, in particular for those that maybe have lost their jobs during this or are furloughed at this time as well. So it just exacerbates the stress put on it. So grateful for all the work that everybody's done. I'm sure that it's, again, a difficult spot to be in. But thank you for the update, and thanks for all the work and effort that everybody's put into it.
All right.
Thanks, Bruce.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thanks for that report. Moving on now to the action portion of our agenda. First up is the consent items, and underneath the consent items is the language Tim Miner is sharing on the screen. I would entertain a motion for approval.
Move the approval of consent items, and that the Chief Financial and Operations Officer be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $1,597,891.49.
Second.
Okay. Second by Rob to Bruce's motion. And again, this is the expenditures for the month of April, April 1 to April 30. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda is passed. And now next up, here, let me exit from full screen, get to the agenda. All right, first up is the activities code of conduct, which we discussed at the work session. And that would be Andrea, is that right?
Aaron.
I have this one.
Here.
So a couple of updates that were made to this since you last saw it is the adjustment in the pronoun language and updating the non-discrimination from our newly adopted 411 policy.
Okay. All right, is there a motion to approve
So
these
moved.
changes? All right, Carrie moved. Second?
Second.
Second.
All right, second, Bruce, I heard his voice. So there's been a motion, a second. Any further discussion with regard to the changes and making the language consistent? You mentioned the pronouns and so forth, and adopting the language from 411 and so forth. Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the changes as recommended by the administration, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the motion passes. Next up is on the agenda on the consent agenda is the virtual charter school contract. That would be Dave Grambo.
Exactly. Yep. Thank you very much. At the last meeting, we had reviewed the contract, went over the executive summary. Bruce had a few questions on the numbers and the data in terms of student enrollment. So have some of that for you. So real quickly, we had about 250 students that were involved in the current Hudson Virtual Learning Academy in some fashion. The vast majority of those were students with 3 or more classes. Some were less than that, and some were full-time. As you know, if you approve this contract, this will enable us to accept open enrolled students in. At this point, we cannot do that in a virtual school. You need to have the charter in order to allow that. In terms of the trends for open enrollment, launching our virtual academy greatly impacted the reduction in open enrolled out, which is a good thing. We had 39 students that, if not for the Hudson Virtual Learning Academy, would likely have gone to a different district open enrolled out. So that helped reverse that trend. And each year we're seeing far greater numbers of students that were attending virtual learning academies, charter schools in other districts. So just launching that virtual learning academy helped change that. We had 11 students that were enrolled in other virtual charter schools that returned to Hudson. So resident students who we were able to bring back into the Hudson School District. So that was fantastic. And in all, it resulted in a very positive shift in our open enrollment balance, essentially almost getting to equal. So we hope that if this contract is approved, we'll be able to further change that trend so we can become the positive where we'll have more students open enrolled into the Hudson School District than out.
It's a nice jump. Thank you for sharing that data. Certainly good to see the shift there, and you know, that all equals revenue for us in the positive. So good to see that. Thank you very much for sharing the news.
Absolutely.
Mr. President.
Goes to Sarah Engstrom White. She's, again, the piece that makes our program special, I think, is that we have a blended option. And Sarah works with counselors, teachers to make sure that when a student or a family expresses interest in a virtual learning option, they sit down and they tailor a program that makes sense for that student. It's not a one size fits all. It's not a cookie cutter. By having this charter, if we're fortunate enough to get this approved, that opens up more options, and looking forward to that.
Rob?
So Dave, and maybe this question's for Tim, from a virtual standpoint versus a student that's actually in our buildings, are we receiving the same amount of revenue from the state for that student, or is it different?
Yeah, it's the same. They're counted once they're enrolled in the Hudson School District. It's just like any other open enrolled student. They're one of ours.
All right. Well, and as I call for a motion to approve the recommendation, I want to also thank you, Dave, for all the work that you put in on this and trying to bring us into the 21st century, so to speak. I mean, there's a lot of background work that had to get to this point, and getting, the parents behind this, and getting the separate corporation, and all that. So great job. Is there a motion to approve then this virtual charter?
I move to approve the charter school contract that Dave worked on.
Second.
Sorry, Heather, Bruce beat you. All right. So motion by Sue, second by Bruce. And any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the motion, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, and the contract is approved. Again, congratulations, Dave, on your great work, and we'll look for continued growth in this area. Next up, under the action item, which was discussed at the last work session, is the 2021 salary recommendations in terms of the base pay, as well as we have a defined group of teachers that had requested some special consideration and or catch up. So we've got a recommendation from the administration of 1% for the base. But we also have within that memorandum, letting the board members know that tabling this to October and trying to table all considerations of adjustments of salaries. And then if approved in October, would become retroactive. So that is also an option, but it depends on the form of the motion. So I open it up first. Is there anything that I didn't touch on, or anything new to add to the memo that was already given to board members 2 weeks ago?
I think the thing to keep in mind is, the administration's recommendation is the 1% board approved increase. If the board does choose to table the recommendation, which they absolutely have the ability to do so, as outlined in the memo, we would strongly encourage the board to consider support for the performance pay structures that we have in place, so that if you did have a motion to table, that it would potentially include, with the intent, regardless of what happens with the board approved increase, the intent would be to honor our performance pay structure so that people can feel confident knowing that based on their evaluations and other things that we have going on, that the board's going to continue to honor that obligation.
Thank you for reminding me, Nick, on that. All right. Sue, you have a question?
I was just going to say that I thought that Andrea made that really, what Nick just said, I thought Andrea made that really clear in there, that this doesn't affect the, the salary structure. Andrea, is there any advantage or disadvantage if we wait till October, or do you think there's other factors that'll jump out around this coronavirus thing we're in? Or can we just get the job done tonight? And
I don't think there's a negative for waiting. I mean, it's historically we've waited, in the bargaining days, we would often wait until October to do the increases. So it's not unprecedented to do it. And then especially right now, not knowing how long this is going to last, what's going to happen. There's so many variables that are unknown at this time that I haven't personally heard anything since the work session from staff raising issues with this. I think it feels good to have some certainty. And tomorrow we're going to be printing off contracts and mailing out contracts to teachers. I think that'll feel really good for them to get that. I don't think, again, I haven't heard begrudging with a delay. I don't think that that's been a concern that's come to my attention.
Heather.
So thank you. Given our current situation, I would feel better waiting. And so I would move that we wait until October. We table this on October with the intention, as you stated, Nick or Jamie, to honor any performance structure elements at that time.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is to table basically approval of the administration's recommendation to October. Heather's motion, Bruce second. Any further discussion?
Do we also need to make an amendment that we will be looking at the folks who are internally disproportionate at that time?
I think that I'll go back to Heather, friendly amendment. Your intent to table was to table all things mentioned in Andrea's memo and not just the base pay or the performance pay. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm trying to think back to our discussion. Where I was leaning was holding off on the increase and the performance pay, but I thought we had talked about moving ahead with the plans to make some of those other adjustments.
I think the concern is that until we, like, if it's a 1%, like what's the 1% linked to, right? For that group, I think the work can be done in terms of identification, working with, talking with the teachers that are directly impacted. But I think that's the variable we don't yet know would be the total percent increase.
So we would hold off on any adjustments until October.
Yes, and then have it backdated to the start of their new contract.
Right. That was my recollection from the work session as well, is that we were going to adjourn either one or none, or all or none, rather than a piecemeal fashion.
Mr. President?
Yes, Rob.
I'd like to offer a friendly amendment in that the compensation we're tabling be retroactive.
Oh, yeah. I think that was the intent, Heather. That was your intent, was that would be considered in October to be retroactive. All right.
Yes, that is the intent, but let's make sure that's captured in the motion as it's documented. That's important. Thanks, Rob. So that friendly amendment is accepted. Thank you.
Any further substantive debate or discussion on this?
I just like to say I appreciate how friendly this is.
Yeah. Well, I think it is important that we get the wording correct, because
totally
people are listening to our discussion and everything. But after hearing the legislative update from our superintendent, I think we'd be completely tone deaf to just plow ahead with anything today, considering that the state might be looking at, $1 billion shortfalls and budget repair bills that could tremendously impact our state aid and so forth. So until that picture is cleared up in October, I would be comfortable, though, saying that our commitment is, number one, to the performance pay, number two, to this group of teachers that have gotten out of whack with their peers. But beyond that, I would not necessarily personally commit to anything else beyond that. Go ahead, Bob.
I'd just like to say thank you to those involved with working for a solution for that group of teachers. I think it's very important that we are taking care of that. I was a little concerned about the perception that we're putting it off, and it might not happen as long as that's communicated clearly that this is a priority for us, and retroactive is quite clear that it would be with the start of their contracts. So as long as the communication is clear, I think we're fine. And I'd like to thank Andrea for working on that and all those other involved. Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion? Otherwise, all in favor of the motion as friendly amended on multiple occasions, but I think we've got all the language we want with retroactivity and, the tabling of all rather than just part. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Next up is the board meeting schedule for 2020-2021. That meeting schedule sets
It
generally
has been
our
vetted against,
Mondays,
vetted
right?
against the Packer schedule, Jamie. It has been vetted against choir concerts. It has been, I believe, the only potential conflict could be the national board election coming up. Or I'm sorry, national board convention coming up in April that could potentially conflict with the April 12th meeting. But if we have anybody going. So we thought that that's probably a safe enough one that we may not have anybody going, or, we can change it at a later date. Otherwise, we're keeping the same times, and we moved the one Monday meeting away from that Home for the Holiday concert weekend, and we moved the other Monday meeting that was on October 12th to October 13th, that was going to be another concert.
Mr. President?
Yes, Rob.
Well, first off, to Nick and the administration, thank you very much for coordinating this so that, those board members that have family members who participate in choir events and other events, thanks for helping us with that. And I'd like to make a motion to accept the 2021 Board of Education meeting dates as proposed.
Second.
All right.
Can we have discussion?
Yes, absolutely. I can't see you because I can just see the calendar on there, but anybody that wants to talk, just ask for recognition. Sue, you're up.
Yeah, this is Sue. I just wanted to make a comment about our calendar language, whether it's our school calendar or our board calendar. I think it would be best if we had a common way that that's established when we refer to spring break and the time that we're not in session in December. I like the idea of calling it, winter break or holiday break or spring break. And I would like very much for us to avoid our personal preference language like Holy Week or, Good Friday. We're not in school on Good Friday, because there's many, as long as we're having this equity consciousness now, I think it'd be nice if we could consistently just stick to it as an academic calendar.
Mr. President?
Well, just point of clarification, Sue, though, this is not the academic calendar that we're approving. This is just Board of Education meeting agenda.
I understand that, but we are talking about looking out for Green Bay Packers time and these other things. And so I also want to put in there that the filter of religious holidays, because all of us may practice things a little differently.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, Carrie.
To my knowledge, we do refer to it as spring break and winter break. I know that Good Friday has been mentioned, but other than that, I think we are consistent.
We do not have any
pretty secular.
holidays. Yep, we do not have any religious holidays listed on our school calendars. It is winter break, it is spring break, and it's just no school, not tied to. We do have secular holidays on there, Thanksgiving break, and we do have Memorial Day on there and Labor Day, but we do not have any religious holidays on our calendar.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I just wondered, because of that, you do have on our calendar, on this meeting schedule, a reference to that National School Board convention, which it goes from the 10th to the 12th in New Orleans. I don't know, like you say, at this point, we don't know how many board members would go, and if they go, whether they could get back here to make a 6 o'clock meeting that night. But would it be all right if we put on the schedule the 12th or April 13th, just so that it gives notice to everyone? We're going to meet on one of those two nights, but that we want to clarify whether or not, because if nobody goes, and frankly, if we don't have a vaccine, I doubt that I would go. But I just wanted to be able to, is it bad to have that kind of flexibility on the meeting schedule, or are people just good with the way the motion is? Bruce?
I mean, we've moved meetings in other years. I think there may be that come up. We'll just address them as we normally do. I think to approve it as is good.
All right, very good. I think we've done, as Sue alluded to, we made efforts to avoid certain conflicts, and I think we've done that. We've got a date certain schedule for every work session / special meeting and our regular action meetings. So is there any other debate? I don't see any hands. All those in favor of approving the meeting schedule based on Rob's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, and our meeting schedule for the next school board year is approved. Next, we have an agenda item that actually was not specifically discussed at the work session, and that's online payment processing. And I see Tim's already hit his unmute button. So Tim, I'm sure this is an area that you would like to get some kind of approval on tonight for various reasons.
That's right. Yeah. So what you got in front of you is there are 3 different proposals there. For comparison purposes, we've got the current situation set up, and this is a credit card and payment processing software that we use currently. And you remember FeePay, and they are going to be no more. They'll be wrapping up operations in August. So we went through an extensive review of different providers, and we had IT involved in that, finance and food service. A large part of this will be a food service operation as well. And so the recommendation is to go with a company that it's called My School Bucks and Mosaic. The Mosaic portion is food service. And that total, as we go through that, we've got hardware costs. We need to purchase some pin pads and card readers for this to implement the new software, about $9,600. And then there are annual software fees. You can see those there down in that second section at the top. And there is no annual transaction fee with this, but there is a processing fee. And so that's for credit card payments, that type of thing. So as we go across, the next company that was looked at was a partnership of a company called PayPams and PCS. It's the same as what we have with FeePay and PCS. The credit card processing fee is the same there. And then Titan was the third company that met the different metrics here. So we'd like to try and get action on this because we've got a lot of transition that will have to take place. A lot of work done by ITS and food service as well as finance to get things transitioned over. And then we'll have training for people that will be using it and getting everything set up. So that's why we'd like to, if you're comfortable tonight, it would be great if we can get an approval for My School Bucks and Mosaic tonight.
Are you wanting a motion then? You're wanting a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can make a motion.
Okay.
I move that we approve the recommendation for the payment processing software from My School Bucks and Mosaic.
Is there a second to Sue's motion?
Second.
All right, second by Heather. And I have a question, Tim, no, just a real quick synopsis of why we would go with My School Bucks if there's no one-time fees with PayPam. And a second to that question would be a follow-up is that would you expect this, once we set this one-time fee up with My School Bucks, how long would you see us continuing the relationship with My School Bucks? Or would you envision another change 2, 3, 10 years down the road, whatever, to some other company?
Well, the biggest thing for the change was that FeePay is no longer. Again, in August, they'll cease operations. I would anticipate, when we look at these things, we definitely want to get some longevity out of the investment, because the investment, the big one there is a one-time investment of hardware costs. And we definitely want to get some years out of this. There are no guarantees. Technology changes rapidly, and sometimes we even look at if there's something better. But that being said, this is something we'd like to have some stability, and we'd like to have something that's going to hopefully an investment that's going to last at least 5 years.
Okay. Yeah, and I understood that fee pay is not going to be around anymore, but you're not recommending pay PAMs. And so that's why I'm wondering why pay PAMs is not being recommended if it's going to be roughly $14,000 less to go with them.
Yeah, one of the reasons is that they're having trouble meeting our data privacy requirements, and that's kind of a big deal right now is student data privacy, and they have not been able to meet that. We've had a few issues with the PCS system as well, so that's why we're not recommending them.
Okay, well, and that answers my question. Usually there's a good explanation if you're not going with the lowest bid. So to me, that's all you need to say if they're not willing to abide by the student privacy. Any other questions from other board members?
Mr. President?
Carrie, go ahead.
Well, Tim, beyond the security issue, it looks like though in year 2 that it's roughly $10,000 less per year going forward as long as it's viable.
Right. So you've got that's exactly right. Well, 11,600 because you've got the one-time startup fee and the hardware costs. So
Well, but I'm sorry, less than pay PAMs,
yes, right.
roughly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Haven't we used pay PAMs before we went to fee pay?
Yeah. So currently we have pay PAMs paired up with PCS in the food service area. It gets kind of complicated, but one of the other things we get here is we get a little bit better integration, and we actually get to reduce down the number of different systems that we're using. So, but that's right, Bob.
10 minutes.
Hey, Mr. President,
Yes, Bruce.
just kind of taking on to James. Is there any benefit by going to a 2-year agreement timeframe instead of a 1-year, just in terms of those annual estimated processing fees?
Okay, yeah, let me just clear that up. So it's the annual software and other fees, those are annual, but we'll enter into a longer term contract with them.
Okay. All right.
And so just to be clear, the annual fee that my school bucks would be 82,000. And it's only about 3,000 more than what we're currently used to with fee pay.
Right, on a year-on-year operating cost, that's correct.
All right. Any other discussion then or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion as stated and seconded signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. All right, we have a new company for our online payment processing. Thanks for your work on that, Tim. I know it's really important to get everything synchronized, and it's been a few years since I had students, but I know it's one huge frustration when fees can't get paid or they don't get processed simply. And I know it. And thank you for protecting our students' data privacy as well. All
Mr.
right.
President?
Yes, Rob.
Yeah, Tim, do you have any idea how long it's going to take to get everything set up on board the new system? More curious than anything.
We want to be done by July, so we're done plenty early because fee pay will be able to use them to help transition some of this over, but we want to be done far ahead of the time that they pull the plug.
All right. Thanks for, again, your work on that. Final agenda item is the approval of the first reading of the second group of student policies, and it's basically policy 411 and then with decimal points for the various sub areas. But this is getting at very important areas of our policy, making it consistent with language and non-discrimination and so forth. Is there a motion to approve?
President?
Yes, Sue, or Heather, rather. Heather?
I move to approve the first reading of the second grouping of student policies 411, 1 through 6, and deletions of unnecessary related policies.
Yes, and Sue?
I'll second.
All right. So Heather and Sue are almost simultaneous, but one gets the motion and the other gets the second. And any further discussion then? This is, again, the first reading. We have one more reading, and then it becomes the policy of the school district. So Any further questions? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed, say nay. The first is hereby approved. And that concludes our agenda as I see it.
May I make a
So-
comment, Mr. President?
All right.
Just wanted to make a comment. I just want to compliment the work of Andrea and Aaron on this, because I know this round they used a very fine tooth comb, maybe a baby comb, maybe a baby hair comb through it. And I've pestered them many times with ideas and input. And I think they've been very masterful in updating this language, which was hugely necessary given the time frame that we live in.
Yes. It's nice not to be living in the 1980s anymore. So as much as I have nostalgia for that, no, I think we're in good shape now. And thank you for all your work, Aaron and Andrea. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. Gary got the second in there. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 And those opposed? And we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.